Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES-TV.
Hello, I'm Marcia Cavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, there was more shocking news this week about the high number of so-called 701 releases, arrestees who time out of jail or their bond obligations. And now we know that at least one who was released went on to allegedly commit a murder. In Kenner, the numbers are said to be high too, but in this case for the disaster pay given to a city official. There was good news this week, a new head coach for the Saints with strong support from the team, and the once lowly Pelicans now in playoff contention. Our Future Watch segment looks at long-range plans for the zoo, plus the latest from its maternity ward. And the Carnival parade season starts, though still with some concerns about the police shortage. Joining us are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Lee Zurik, anchor and investigative reporter, WVUE-TV Fox 8 News. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Jeff Duncan, sports columnist of the Times-Picayune, the New Orleans Advocate, also an analyst for Fox 8 Sports. First now, we're going to go on over to Lee. And we talked last week about the report you had about the number of 701 releases for last year. Even more, as it turns out.
Yeah, so what happened is we did a report. We got data from the judges in the court system, and that data showed in 2021 there were 885 701 releases. And what that is essentially is that someone is arrested for a crime. The DA has 60 days for someone in jail and 150 days for someone who bonds out to charge them. And if they don't, if the DA's office doesn't, they're released from jail or released from that bond obligation. And what we found out was under the Leon Cannizzaro, the previous DA, there was about 100 to 130 701 releases a year. And then under Jason Williams in his first year, that rose up to 885 in the data that we got from the court system. We knew that data was low, though, actually, and the reason why is because 2 of the 4 bond commissioners don't label the bond obligation releases in the system with that 701 number. So there's really no way for us to determine that with the data we got from the court. Now, the MCC, Metropolitan Crime Commission, actually did the tedious task of going docket by docket, literally of everyone arrested in the system, and determined that 885 number was actually more than 1,500 701 releases in the prior year.
And so you did an interview with D.A. Williams for the report last week, and he stood firm and defended what his office was doing. However, this week, he sort of took a different stance. Yeah,
I mean, he definitely took a different stand. And look, we spent at least 30, 45 minutes with him in his office when we interviewed him before, during, and after. And he downplayed the numbers. He really did. And even when he counted them out, he says a little change here, a little change here. And he defended what his office was doing. And then he was quite different yesterday, on Thursday, when he changed his tune somewhat and said, yes, we failed here, we made some mistakes, and we're making these changes trying to address these problems. And I do believe the public outcry about this is what forced this to happen, to change.
Now, okay, what is he doing to change? I mean, we read that he's really shifting staff around.
Yeah, he is shifting a lot of staff around. He's replaced his first assistant, screening division, made some other changes, trying to, aware of the problem. You would hope that they have looked internally as to the reason for this bottleneck, because essentially what they're not doing likely is just screening these cases in the proper amount of time. So they need to either put some more staff or put some more people or something to screen these cases and get these through the system quicker, because they're essentially timing out because they haven't screened the cases.
So, when a new DA takes over, oftentimes they bring in new people. I mean, the older people exit, maybe not entirely, but some will leave. So is there a problem over there with experience in terms of screening?
I mean, look, they had someone in the screening division who had been there for a while. They have a lot of staff members who have been there for some time. Bob White, who was his first assistant, who he just recently demoted, worked under the Eddie Jordan, when he was DA, 15 years or so ago. So, certainly the DA, Jason Williams, he's been a defense attorney and a council member. He hasn't prosecuted cases ever. He hasn't worked in a DA's office, but he certainly has people in that office who are experienced in how to work in and manage a DA's office.
So as a result, Lee, with all of these 701 releases, what sort of impact has that had on our community in terms of crimes being committed?
And there have been some crimes where we have reported on that where people are 701 released and then they go and commit another crime somewhere else. And look, if those charges would have been accepted, do we know we don't know, but it has definitely had some type of an impact on things right now. And look, it raises a bigger question. You have 885 cases that essentially haven't been screened, haven't determined if charges need to be made or not. So that's police doing work, you would hope, and giving a report, and the DA's office not living up to its end of the bargain, if you will, and deciding, are we going to accept these charges? Are we going to refuse them? What are we going to do with this case?
So when someone is released on 701, if they've been in jail, then after, if they meet that 701 deadline, they don't have to pay bail to get out. Or someone who already, did post a bond, and they're released of those bail obligations. But are the charges still there? Do the charges still remain?
I mean, they're still there. So, they haven't decided to accept or refuse the charges. So they'll have an arrest report, something like that. But, there's no outcome to the case. And look, there are many there that they're going to likely, I would think, go back and try to screen and figure out, because obviously this is an issue you want to look forward on, but you would hope the DA's office would also look back at these 885. Some of them they have screened just after the fact later, but a large portion of them they haven't. So you would hope they would go through those and determine if they are going to accept or refuse those charges on those older cases from last year.
And one last thing in this discussion, the DA had said when he was campaigning he wanted to reduce that time to 5 days, and we heard the public defender say he'd like to see the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, the public defender, Derwin Bunton, who we interviewed, says, most other states have, it's not that 60 or 150. It's much lower. There's much less time where a DA has the time to screen and determine if he will, accept charges or refuse the charges. Jason Williams, as you said, campaigned on a 5-day turnaround. So after 5 days, he will determine if he will accept or decline the charges. I mean, obviously, at least in the first year, he has not come close to living up to that 5-year promise he made in his campaign.
Okay, well, we shall see. Thanks a lot, Lee. Let's now go on over to Jeff and some news in the Saints world. New coach.
Yes, Sean Payton, of course, a couple weeks ago, surprised everyone by stepping down from the position. He's going to take some time off for personal reasons more than anything else. I think he's probably going to do a little TV work out in Los Angeles. And that obviously left a gaping hole in the front office and the brain trust of the New Orleans Saints, and they've filled it with his longtime assistant, Dennis Allen. Has, of course, done a great job with the defensive coordinator position. He's been with the organization for 12 years. Anyone that knows the New Orleans Saints knows this front office, knows ownership. They value stability, Marcia. They value continuity. And Dennis Allen was the favorite all along because he was the top assistant on the staff under Sean Payton. He knows the culture. He knows the roster. He knows everyone in the building. He's familiar with Sean Payton's formula for coaching success. So really it was kind of a no-brainer choice. They interviewed 5 other candidates, but the front runner all along was Dennis Allen.
So what can then we, the Saints Nation here, the fans of the Saints, what can we expect in these months to come in terms of sort of regrouping and rebuilding?
Well, Dennis Allen's going to take his first order of business is putting together his coaching staff. There's going to be some departures. It's not just going to be status quo. He's already let a few assistant coaches go. He's bringing in some, I think, coaches that he's had his eye on all along. You know, Dennis Allen's been a head coach before. He coached with the Oakland Raiders, somewhat a dysfunctional organization at the time, and he did not do very well win-loss-wise. He was 8-28, but the Saints know what they have in Dennis Allen. They're very confident. Gail Benson, Mickey Loomis feel like he will be much better for that experience. He's putting together his staff right now, and then they've got to figure out the biggest question: who's going to play quarterback for this team going forward? It's a big question mark. I think it's the #1 priority this offseason.
Yeah, it's a big question mark for everybody right now. But Dennis, go ahead, Errol.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jeff, that amazing game during the season when the Saints played Tampa Bay, and Sean Payton was out because of COVID, so Dennis Allen was coaching the team, and they shut out Tampa Bay and they won 8-0. Was that in effect an audition? Do you think that game had any impact on the final decision?
Well, it certainly didn't hurt his cause. There's no question about that. But I think Dennis Allen would have gotten this job if they'd have lost that game 35-0. He's that well thought of in the organization. He's well liked. I know when he got the job internally, the staff was having a celebration out there. He's well respected, too, around the league. He's done an incredible job of turning around the Saints defense. When he took it over back in 2015 and 16, they were last in the league, coming off one of the worst defensive performances in the history of the NFL. And now they're a top 5 unit. So his on-the-field ability, plus I think his kind of CEO-like demeanor and temperament really, I think, meshes well with the general manager, Mickey Loomis. It was going to take someone to come in and really knock their socks off in the interview process to unseat him for this job.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit, but still staying with the Saints, the incident with Alvin Kamara in Las Vegas.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good at all. I wish I had better news for you. Obviously arrested out in Las Vegas after the Pro Bowl this past weekend, was involved in a bar fight at a Las Vegas club in the early morning hours Saturday night before the game on Sunday. And there's video evidence that really, I think, is going to make it difficult for Alvin Kamara to get out of this situation. The league has already started investigating. I know the Saints, their security team's also investigating it. His attorney has come out with a statement. Didn't really say a whole lot in the statement. I think we're looking at a multiple game suspension for Alvin Kamara, even if the charges are dropped. The way the league personal conduct policy works, it doesn't really matter. They've got this video evidence, and that video, I guarantee you, is going to become public at some point. And depending on how bad it is, I think will determine how many games we're looking at here for Alvin Kamara. But I would expect him to start next season probably with at least a 4-game suspension, maybe as many as 6 or 8 games, depending on how bad this is.
Yeah, this isn't a felony charge in Las Vegas. And as the attorney for him, for Kamara, said, this just is not in keeping with the reputation, the Alvin Kamara that we all think we know.
Right, and we've never really had any incidents in the past with him. This is his first real off-the-field issue in his entire career. He's a leader on the team, one of the most liked players on the team, and I'm sure we're going to hear from him soon about this incident because it's something that I'm sure he's disappointed and embarrassed. It's one of the reasons, frankly, that a lot of people did not want the Pro Bowl to be played in Las Vegas, just because there's too much temptation. Too many things can go awry off the field, and we've already seen it happen with Alvin Kamara.
Okay. All right, Jeff, thanks a lot. Let's go on over to Errol. And it is Carnival time, Errol.
It is. It really kind of starts in earnest this week. You know, if you look at what's going on this weekend, you can kind of see some very subtle changes in Carnival, most for the better. Well, the biggest change is the routes are a little bit more condensed. The Croix de Feu, which usually dangles into Marigny, into the French Quarter, really starts in Marigny this year and goes into the French Quarter. And so there's not as much as that parade route leading into it. But something else that's happened over the last couple of years, and I think that is good, is the evolution of small walking crews. And these are good because they go primarily into Marigny and into the French Quarter. You know, it was 50 years ago this year that they took the parades out of the big parades out of the French Quarter. And those parades, at least a smaller scale parade, belong in the Quarter. They're right for them. And so tonight you have a group called Laborde, which is a walking parade, and it's like an artist parade that's going to the French Quarter. The Croix de Feu, which is, I guess, the biggest of the small parades, started many years ago, like in the 1970s. It's something called the Crew of Clones. and it was thought about like a temporary arts center. It was supposed to be an artist parade. After a while, there was a little bit of a split in the organization, and then they started the Crew de Feu, which is dedicated to the French Quarter, as the name suggests. It's a different kind of parade. It does satire, as other parades do. It's a lot more bawdy than the other parades. But the thing about these smaller parades is that they're close to the action, they're close to the people, and they're really not about beads. They're really about looking at what's on the floats. Some of the things will shock you that's on the floats,
yes,
but they're really just more of a visual type of parades. I really like that thing. Instead of this being built by some float builder somewhere, it's groups that get together over the year in somebody's carport or somewhere, or in their shed or something, and build these floats. So it's more participatory in terms of those involved. And then there's another crew, the Crew d'Illusion, which started a few years ago, which follows the Crew de Feu. So that's become a really big night for that first weekend. And so the first weekend is really small parades very much concentrated in the French Quarter. And the ultimate in smallness is the next night, is the thing called Teeth Rex, which is it started off as sort of like a shoebox type parade, imitation of the Rex parade, but they're really, really clever. And again, it's all of these artists from that area who put together really, really creative parades. And so there's some good stuff to see, visual things to see within that first week. Overshadowing all this, though, is the police issue.
Yeah.
We know that the routes have been cut down because of a lack of police. I suspect on the parade routes everything will be fine, but the question people are wondering about is what's happening away from the parade routes. You know, there have been a few incidents in the last few weeks, not necessarily all Carnival related, but where there was a big event and people broke car windows and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be that kind of support out there too. Otherwise, that's going to drive people away from coming.
Okay. But Carnival is underway. Carnival spirit really revving up now.
It really is, you know, and down the line is Jazz Fest. And people are expecting a Jazz Fest. And I think a good Mardi Gras will do a lot to make a Jazz Fest really, really successful.
Okay, Eve, thanks a lot. On over to Dawn right now. And what's happening at the Audubon Zoo?
Well, if you can get there, there's a lot happening. We've talked on and off over the years about the big construction project from Leek Avenue to East Drive. That's the whole area in front of Audubon Park and Audubon Zoo. It is finally underway. There's lots and lots and lots of signage to direct you around, but as of this morning, you could go upriver on Magazine Street in front of the zoo, but you could not go downriver. You had to go around the flyer through the parking lot. That work started within the last month. It's going to take about a year. They're doing all the subsurface drainage and power lines, and they're also resurfacing the whole thing, redoing all the curb cuts and crosswalks. It's not supposed to be complete until next winter of 2023. So we got a while to go. In the meantime, there's a lot happening within the zoo, and they do say that their visitorship, in spite of the construction, in spite of COVID, is starting to come back up. You'll see school buses again and school groups going through and tourists going through as well and locals. And there's a lot to see, including, we have a picture of him, a new baby Sumatran orangutan. This is an endangered species, critically endangered Sumatran orangutan. Minari, the zoo's orangutan, gave birth to twins on Christmas Eve. One of the twins sadly did not survive, but this little guy did and is getting 24/7 care at the zoo and is doing well and spending his days, it's a little baby boy orangutan, spending his days with the other orangutans learning how to do all sorts of things. So there will be naming him sometime soon and they'll let us know when he's on display. They're also excited to announce, they say at the zoo, a baby two-toed sloth arrived at the zoo on January 10th. So that's kind of fun. The zoo also has dealt with COVID of its own, not just the visitors who can't come because of COVID, but the lions. Several of the lions got COVID about a month ago. I'm told they all recovered fine and no other animals got COVID, but while the lions had COVID, they had coughing, sneezing, and nasal discharge, just like the rest of us. They're back to good health. And then big news with the Audubon Institute overall. You know, they always do a big project that, you know, kind of annually or semi-annually. The arrival of the lions was the last big project at the zoo site. Now the focus right now for the next year is on the aquarium site, where the aquarium is getting a rehab to fit in with the new ferry terminal and the new hotels in that part of Canal Street. They're also moving the insectarium and butterfly garden over to the aquarium. So after 30 years on the riverfront, it's getting a big refresh. They're going to do it when tourism's still down, so it shouldn't be affecting visitorship too much in that part of town, but it's supposed to open the newly revamped aquarium in 2023 as well. So the new road to the zoo and the new aquarium all done in 2023.
But the aquarium is still open for business,
It is still
right?
open for business.
Just the new area by 2023.
The new area, a new big lobby, a new presence on Canal Street is what
All
they're
right.
calling it.
Well, that's very exciting. That is all good news. And that picture was just adorable.
so
Put a
cute.
smile on our face. Absolutely. Okay, let's go on back over to Lee. And you've been looking into, over in Kenner, some overtime pay for disaster recovery paid to one Kenner official.
Yeah, one of the deputy CAO, Chad Pitfield of Kenner, in the 4 months after Hurricane Ida was paid $86,000 in disaster pay. His total take-home pay last year was about $225,000, and we started to look at the time. Basically, the city's not following its policy. It's paying him for many months after Ida that the policy clearly says he shouldn't be paid for, yet the mayor continued to pay him. And then Mr. Pitfield was also a reserve for the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, and what we did was match some of his records with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office to his timesheets with Kenner, and saw that there were a number of instances of potential, essentially alleging that he's in two places at one time, where he's clearly alleging he's somewhere for the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, but also getting paid by the city of Kenner, or getting disaster pay during that same time period. He, after we started asking questions, he resigned his position as a reserve deputy with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office.
So these, his timesheets, they were signed off. Who signed off on them?
Well, he does, and then the chief financial officer of the city pays them. So there's a process where every day they fill in because they need to document this extra pay that they're trying to get. So they literally every day put in their hours they worked and the duties that they're doing. So it's pretty clear what he is alleging, the days and the times that he is alleging he is working for this extra money.
So the city's trying to get reimbursed from FEMA down the line?
So yeah, so that would be FEMA money that taxpayers in every parish, every county in this country would essentially reimburse Kenner for, yes.
So in allowing this claim for disaster pay to go into what, December, was it?
Yeah.
4 months after the storm, do other parishes allow that?
So no, they don't. And we checked, with hard-hit areas, whether it's St. Charles or St. John or Terrebonne and Lafourche, and none of them has a policy like this. Most of them stopped it within 30 to 45 days after the storm, and they paid some overtime, some gave comp time, but none paid the amount of money that Kenner was paying for some of its select employees.
And there certainly was a lot of work to be done in Kenner. It was hit hard, but in those other parishes too.
Yeah, I mean, Kenner certainly did not have more damage than those other parishes at all. So, there are definitely some questions there. The council has some serious questions about this now as well, too.
So they're looking into making some policy changes, perhaps?
Yeah, they are trying to discuss to make some policy changes, and after 5 days that the mayor has to get approval from the council to essentially approve any disaster pay after 5 days.
All right. All righty. Thanks a lot, Lee. And back on over to Jeff. A quick note about the Pelicans. How we're looking.
Well, we're 2/3 of the way through the season, Marcia, and the Pelicans now are in the 10th spot in the Western Conference standings, which is good enough to get in the playoffs. That's the NBA. 10 of the 15 teams in each conference make the playoffs at the end of the season. Look, after they started 1-12, I don't think anybody thought they would have a chance to have postseason play this season. And really, new coach Willie Green has done a great job of kind of righting the ship. They've made a big trade this week. David Griffin pulled off bringing in C.J. McCollum, a shooting guard from the Portland Trail Blazers. It's kind of brought a lot of enthusiasm back to the organization, I think energized the fan base. Now, they lost their first game with him on Wednesday night at the Smoothie King Center, but they've got 4 more games this week coming up at home. It's a big stretch for them. If they can pull off a bunch of wins, they can kind of put themselves, I think, in great position to get into the playoffs, and they need to. David Griffin's under a lot of pressure this year to get this team in the playoffs, and they've had a lot of tough luck. Zion Williamson, of course, their star player, has not played yet. We expect him potentially to be back after the All-Star break in a couple weeks, and that would be huge news for the Pelicans and their fans who've wanted to see him play all season long, and he's had setback after setback with his foot.
And so he's not played at all this season?
No, not played a game, and of course he's one of the rising stars in the league and clearly the franchise player. They built the entire roster around him, and he's just not been able to get on the court. He's had a really long recovery from this foot surgery he had at the beginning of the season.
Jeff, is the problem physical, or is there something else we need to know about, Errol?
No, I don't think so, Errol. I think it's a very finicky injury, and he's had to have, I know, some plasma injected in there to promote healing after the surgery. It's a very kind of common thing. And the scary thing about it is it's a foot injury. He's a big man, and there's a history of big men in the NBA. When they have these foot injuries, they take a long time to recover. But I will say this, there's a lot of renewed enthusiasm. He's going to be back on the court in a couple weeks, and that should be a big push for the New Orleans Pelicans because he is the key to their entire franchise. I think business-wise, they've really struggled off the court attracting people because he hasn't been on the court this season. He's a big-time star, and they need him back.
Okay, well, we hope he comes back soon. All right, other stories now. E, go to you.
Well, the special session of the legislature is pretty much at the halfway point now. It goes until the 20th. It looks like there's going to be a lot of friction during that last half. And that whole issue about the creating the other black majority congressional district seemed like it's going to be a lot of arguing over that, and probably it's going to go to court.
All righty. Thanks a lot, E. Over to Dawn.
Besides the excitement about Joe Burrow in the Super Bowl, it's also the first time we've had mobile sports betting in Louisiana. Expect to see Texas and Mississippi folks heading across the borders to place their wagers this weekend. It'll be interesting.
A lot of betting expected. Lee, over to you.
We did a series of stories on NOPD officers double dipping and getting paid for work they weren't doing. Expect some big developments in that coming up soon.
Okay, we'll definitely be looking for that. Jeff, over to you.
Yeah, speaking of the Super Bowl, when you're watching the game on Sunday, don't leave your TV when it gets to the end of the first half. There's going to be a 2-minute commercial produced here in New Orleans, out actually in Harahan, by Swaybox Studios.
Right.
Puppet animation. Really cool stuff.
My first cousin, by the way, the producer of that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Who's that?
Arthur Mintz.
Arthur Mintz, and then
Teresa
also
Anderson.
Teresa
Yes.
Anderson, and the
Yep.
musician. Yeah, so yeah, we'll definitely be
It's
looking
incredible.
for that.
It's incredible stuff.
That's really exciting. Actually, in their early days, they did a little bit of work here at the new WYES studios,
They
too.
did.
Okay, guys, thanks so much for being here, and thank you all for joining us. We'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.
Informed Sources is made possible in part by Susie and Pierre G. Villery.
With a lifetime of passion for public television, we are pleased to help underwrite Informed Sources.
Please join us in supporting WYES-TV.